Hi there, my name is Mario. I have 10 plus years working in IT. I've worked in a series of regulatory heavy organizations like banking, healthcare, and today I am going to show you how to audit your M365 environment. In this testing environment, it is a hybrid environment because in my opinion, hybrid is the future of the enterprise. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into it. At the moment of recording, I will be using the CIS M365 Foundation version 6.0.1 to conduct this audit. Without further ado, let's get into it. I have this brand new environment, which I literally have nothing set up. I have an on-prem AD, which I've set up some groups, some users, some user OUs, and some workstations. I have not set up Microsoft Entra yet, as this is a brand new test environment. I've not activated any licensing or anything like that. I literally just spun this up. So the first thing we're going to do, as if you're starting straight from scratch, we're going to set up Azure AD Connect. The installation is done pretty much. Just click next, next, next. We'll be waiting on it to finish. From this step, it is advised that depends on how you're doing it. I personally, when I am setting this up, I will not be setting up synchronization back and forth. I will only set up one-way synchronization, meaning that I can only sync to the cloud and not from the cloud back, especially for password synchronization, specifically for cloud synchronization. In this setting, I am going to use Express settings, and then we can always go back and configure specific settings that we need because that'll just make our lives faster. We'll come back once that's done. Okay, first thing I am going to do once I am logged in here, I am going to create a new user because we will need a internal user. Otherwise you will encounter this error. You will need an internal user that is already located in here using the Microsoft information. So we'll do a service account. I'll just put it under my name. Just call it Mario something something. We need to give it a password. Let's make sure that we are using the same. Because I don't want to forget this password. Let's get it from our password manager. That's what we're gonna use. Too many words, not necessary. First name, Mario. Last name, B. Yes, we are a member. Job title, JOB. Company name, department IT. You don't have to fill all this stuff out. I am just going through here. Next, we're going to need a role. We're going to need the global admin role. Select that. And we're going to create that. So you need to set up an MFA recovery method, which I've done. And now we're going to give this another try and see if that works for us. Yes, it's the account we want to use. And of course, as we get further down into the audit, this should not be a thing that we need to do. Okay, and now this portion, I suggest that you have a service account to connect, sync back and forth, but you can also use any account that you'd like. In this instance, I am going to simply create a new service account. We're going to call it service underscore Entra sync. For the password, okay, something that's easier to remember. Password never expires because it's a service account. And of course, we can walk through setting this up, more secure or making it a more secure account because it is a service account, but you know, that's for a different day. So we're gonna give this some, I've given my service account enterprise admin because it is clearly stated right here. We're going to apply, okay, and we're going to use it here, SVC underscore Entra sync. All right, perfect. So right now, we're getting pretty close for the process to be done. So this portion, if you want to use something like, let's say I wanted my user to be my last name at unibyte.com, I would have to verify my domain in Entra itself, but I don't want to do that right now, so I'm just gonna continue without matching my UPN suffixes and verifying my domain. We can also go and configure that later in our Entra tenant. But right now our focus is on configuring Microsoft Entra Sync. Let's let that finish and then we'll be back. This is completed. Recycle bin is not enabled for your forest. We can do that later. TPM on the server is not set up. We can do that later. This is a test environment. Of course, I would assume, it's a quick assumption here, that somewhere that you are doing an audit, all these things are already in place. But this is for the people who are new to this Entra stuff or administration in general, that I think that would help them out see the process in process. All right. Okay, that's done. That's finished. And I am going to go ahead and get out of here and go to work. And then the next video or next episode, we'll start configuring stuff and start auditing stuff. So as you can see here, a lot of my users that I currently have in my AD forest sync over. Honestly, I don't remember. Like this user synced over here. But as we already know, it's synced over with at Unibyte, whatever, blah, 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 on Microsoft instead of at unibyte.com, which it should have, because that's what we have here. But because we didn't verify our domain, that is expected behavior. Once we verify it, if I go to the trouble of verifying it, then that will happen. We have our service accounts, which are here. Perfect. User account. We have all these different other groups that we can try to do stuff with, but we don't have to. Perfect. Making sure that everything is syncing over and everything is fine. All right, perfect. This is the first portion, and in the next portion we'll come back and we'll start making changes and start auditing stuff. All right, you're still here, which is good. As I stated previously, we are going to be using the CIS M365 benchmark to do this audit. Removed all the sections that is related to Microsoft Entra and dumped it here. As you may already know, we don't have to do all of them. So some of it is recommendations. And they have different levels, level 2, level 3, level 1. And also it differs based on licensing levels that you have available to you. The first thing is, because the tenant that I'm using is like fresh out the box, I will have to activate an E3 license, and hopefully I get this series done before the 30 days trial period ends, and I can get this done. So let me jump over to my VM and then we can get started. As we discussed verifying your domains before, I am logged in an M365 Admin Center. If you wanted to verify your domain, let's say I wanted to say my name at unibyte.com, or your standard corporation would have the domain instead of having this long string of on.microsoft.com. This is where you would come and do that. I don't necessarily want to do that because I would have to log into the domain registrar and put in text and then DNS records and all that. We don't have time for all of this. Here's what I'm going to do. I am going to set up an E3 license, and then whenever that's done through, I'll come back and then we'll start doing the process. Okay, perfect. I've paid and purchased a Microsoft E3 license. If you are doing this along or you're watching this because you are a home labber, you will have to enter your credit card information in order to do a trial for a month. Otherwise, if you are a corporation, you should already have this license available to you. So you wouldn't have to go through all this hoopla and process. The correct way to do this is to have licensing groups that you can use to manage licenses. So for example, I have licensing group M365 E3, but this is being managed on-prem. So for all future users who live on-prem, I would assign them to that group and they will basically get licenses from that group. Here's the other caveat that I know we haven't gotten into it yet, just like that you should know about. And here are the groups. These are where they live. Microsoft or I've not even gotten to that part yet, but it is best practice for the CIS that your admin account for Microsoft Entra M365 live online only. This account that has global admin access will be the only one that's licensed and the only one that has access to administer my cloud platforms, while my admin accounts on-prem will have access to dominate anything that's on Active Directory. And by that, what I mean by my admin on-prem account, this is what I'm talking about, like my -A account, which stands for admin. Most corporations would have something similar, -A, whatever the heck they use, okay? Also, this is not that serious. I will try to make some jokes in between if I remember. We're gonna try to have some fun. Another good thing that we can do while we're starting here, a lot of this prerequisite stuff is for, I have people who are just getting started out in mind. If you're an expert, you probably wanna scroll a little bit further forward. So you can create a group in here. What you should do is create a group to assign the license to and assign the user to that license group. Like I already talked about, but these are on-prem. So these would be for on-prem users, but the cloud only global admin or administrators, you should do the same. Okay, so I am licensed, so that means I should be able to start doing things and start making changes. The first recommendation in the CIS documentation that I show you is per user MFA. Ensure that per user MFA is disabled. But we don't want to do that yet. What we want to do before we disable per user MFA is we want to do conditional access policies. So we want to govern our MFA policy via conditional access policy. So we're gonna get that started. All right, here we go. We're going to institute our first MFA policy, and in the documentation for CIS, this is Control 5.22. Also, when you are testing, we'll cover this here while we're here. You can, let's say for example, you are testing a policy. You can put it on report only, and report only is the policy wouldn't take effect until you turn it on. So you can have logs and you can review where users are getting blocked before, if you are testing things out. You put it on report only and you turn it on when the policy is ready to go live. Here's something that you probably won't learn from, the A+, or if you're taking the Microsoft MS 900, I think it's called, is standardizing naming schemes. A good practice is to start naming things for what they stand for. It makes it so much easier. Like when you're dealing with a big corporation, like a bigger company, this is a lab, of course, but you want to start having naming schemes that makes it easier to remember. Like for example, you can have an org name. For me, it's Unibyte, which is UB. CA, conditional access, what it's doing. You can add more because if there are more policies to be more descriptive, obviously, but we're gonna rock with this. Or you could have did this as well. MFA all users. Like you can be as descriptive as you want because later down the line, as you add more policies, this will become a freaking headache to manage, I promise you. Or you have to go back and institute all of these policies or renaming these policies because they start making less and less sense and they start colliding with other policies that you are creating. Who do we want this MFA to attach to? We want it to attach to all users. We want this to apply to every single resources that the users are logging on to. So we're gonna collect all users. Another good thing is, if I wanted to, I can input trusted networks, which we can configure sometime down the line if that is covered in the CIS. If it's not covered, I can make a video on that, but probably not. But anyways, so you can configure like internal trusted networks. For example, your company's internal network only, where the people are logging into, you can exclude, like if the connection is coming from the company's internet, like intranet, internal network, then the MFA can be excluded. But we're not gonna do that because I don't want to configure this. Under conditions, here's an example of how you would use conditions. I recently instituted trusted device policy, meaning that a device would need to be registered in Microsoft Intune and meet the compliance that we set for it in order for it to log on to any of our Microsoft products. So in here, you can select which devices this policy is targeting. We are targeting all the policies, so we're going to move straight to grant. What do we want to happen when this person or this user is trying to log on? We want them to have MFA. Okay, this is exactly what I was just talking about regarding setting up a trusted device policy. So in here as well, in the grant section, you can come here and you can say, require device to be marked as compliant in order for them to log on, or for that the device to be registered to be Microsoft Entra hybrid join. We can also set this up in a later day. Don't hold my words for it. But anyways, yeah, so I recently instituted this at the company I work for, where every user would need a trusted device in order to use any Microsoft products. And if they're trying to use their own personal machine at home, they cannot get on our environment. When we get a little bit further into it, I hope it includes it, you want what is called a brick glass account. Something happened where somebody forgot their passcode, or you need an emergency way to get in. You can use the exclude users in order to be able to get yourself back in. So what I am going to do is my main account, the Gmail account that I use to first log in and create everything, I am going to exclude it temporarily to make sure that I don't get locked out of this tenant. So yes, I understand. I excluded this account. Even if somehow I got locked out, I will be able to get back in and reconfigure everything. But I already do have MFA for this user, so I should be good. 5.121 is per user MFA disabled. So we're going to take a quick look at that, and we're going to disable it. So if we go to users and we go to all users, there should be a button here for per user MFA. If yours is enabled, you will have the option here to disable MFA. As you can see on mine, all of them are disabled. So the first control, 5.121 is set. So we're going to cross that off. Per user MFA for all users is currently disabled. I am learning on the fly here because I realize I can't show you the controls every time, because that's going to slow down this whole flow, and I might not even finish, if we're being honest. I'm going to keep it 100 with you. But, I'm just going to read the control that I am doing, and I'm just going to do it. And at the end, I am going to show you my Excel sheet to reference all of the controls that I implemented. So the second one, which is 5.12, is a level 2. It says no third-party integrations, meaning that we don't want every single person at the company to register whatever application they want. No, that's IT's job. That's administration job. Like if they need to SSO Adobe, they'll have to put a request for that. Like, hey, we want to register this third-party app, and the admins on the back end will be responsible for that. We don't want the users to be able to do that. But anyways, if we go to users, what are we doing? We're working on user settings. So we want to go to user setting, and it's right here. Users can register application. No, we don't want that. So we're going to save. All right. So that no third-party app integration is checked off our list. 5.1.2.3 is a level 1, and the control is restrict tenant creation by non-admins. Same thing, and it's right below. So you'll go to user setting. We don't want users to be creating tenants on their own. Well, tenant is basically this platform that we're working on. That's the company's tenant. So we don't want them to create a subdomain or sub-tenant of our tenant. If it's set to yes, it restricts the creation of Microsoft ID tenants to the global administrator or tenant creator role, which is exactly what we want. So we're going to save. The next control, of course, is 5.1.2.4. Entra admin access restricted, which is also under user setting. Restrict access to Microsoft Entra Admin Center. But this is great. You can also do this via conditional access policy. So at the last place I was working at, I instituted this to via conditional access, and all admins were part of that group, and only the people who were part of that group could access any of our like administration portals, anything with Azure, M365, and Entra, so forth and so on. So we're going to institute this one. 5.1.2.5, hide remain sign-in option. Now this is like a if you want. So if you don't want users to cache their login session, you can also control this via conditional access policy, but you can also make sure that you hide it. Like users cannot remain signed in. After however long you set, they'll automatically be signed out and they will have to re-authenticate. For me personally, I am going to keep this on because I am labbing. So I am going to do what we call accept the risk or deferred. I am going to defer this policy, which is 5.1.2.5. And the logic here is that the token, the sign-in token, which includes your MFA and so forth and so on, but we can also set a conditional access policy to require the user to refresh that token after 8 hours, which makes sense because you don't want it to keep asking you to log in every time you're logging in or trying to do some work. So throughout the workday, you could be fine, and then the token refreshes for the next day. For me personally, I am going to leave that on. If you want that to be instituted, this is where it is. So we're going to move on to 5.1.2.6. LinkedIn connection is disabled. Okay, this one is a real back and forth because some organizations let you do this and some organizations like doing it. Personally, I am going to disable it, which is right here. Allow users to connect their work account or school account with LinkedIn. And when you go, I don't know if you have it in your organization or if you know what that looks like. When you go on Teams or when you are using Teams, when you hover on somebody's name, it will automatically search for who it thinks that person is on LinkedIn. And you can connect that, make a profile recognition to that person. Okay? That's basically what that is. And we don't want that. We don't want external connection to our internal security. 5.1.3.1 is dynamic group for guests created. So they want us to, most organizations collaborate with other organizations at some point or another. If you look here, you'll see that all member types is equal to, all user type is equal to member. There's another option that says that member type is equal to guest. It's user. User type is equal to guest. We don't have any guests. Obviously, we're not collaborating with any other organizations. But if let's say I wanted to invite X, Y, and Z company, I can create a new user and create that user as an external user, pretty much. Which is the second option. and they would show up as a guest user. And basically what this control is asking us, which is a level 1, group name, Unibyte, we'll do external we'll do guest users. Description, it's great to add descriptions. Description is dynamic group for guest accounts. Membership type, we want a dynamic user. And this, I don't know what language this is, but it's a pretty easy language. So we can just assign it a dynamic rule. Once you're in here, you need to create a property. What are we looking for? We are looking for user type. What type of user is it? We want if the user type is equal to guest. How do they spell it? They spell it guest or guests. Okay, if it's equal to guests, for them to be automatically added here. So we're going to save. So every time we create a new user that is the type of guest, they'll be added here. I think that's pretty easy to get and simple enough. So 5.1.3.1 can be crossed off our list because we implemented it. We'll be moving on to 5.1.3.2. This control is users cannot create security groups. So we are already in groups. We are going to go to general and we're going to find users can create security groups and we're going to set that to no. We obviously want to use least privilege principles and give users as little as possible, as little as they need to do their job. That's what we're trying to do here. That's what we're trying to achieve. M365 groups. Users can create in Azure. We also don't want that unless they are an admin or they are assigned an IT position or IT permissions. All right, next control is 5.1.4.1. So level 2, restrict device join to Entra. So we are moving on to the devices section. And we want to restrict users' ability to join devices to Microsoft Entra. Unless IT, of course, we don't want anyone to just be able to willy-nilly join our tenant or join a device to the tenant. All right, we're going to disable that. Control 5.1.4.2 is a level 1, and it says max device per user limits. We are already here. Ideally, we would like to set this to 5 or custom set it to 1 because, threat actors are using this to register multiple devices, and we don't want that. Also, a user should only theoretically only have one device anyway. Users can have in Microsoft Entra. For example, if we had this, let's save this. If we had devices imported here, they would show here. But because we don't have any devices set up in our environment yet, it doesn't show. But like every user have devices under their name, and it would show under here. And if every device that person have access to or had access to will be listed here. So this is what we're limiting. We're limiting how many devices they can theoretically register under the name. And we're setting that to 5 for now. As we stated earlier, we want to have separation of duties. Like, for example, we have the -A account. We would want to use that locally for a lot of things that we're doing. And you can even have greater level of separation in that. You can have a -W account, which is for workstations, which users who, like a help desk person who is responsible for creating these devices or bringing devices over to Entra would have one of those. And a -A, you could only use that for getting onto server work or doing greater elevated, like a L9, for example, or L3, whatever level, however you guys discuss that in your organization, right? But we don't want our global administrator, the most powerful account, to be added as a local administrator on a device, especially if that device get compromised. We don't want that. That whoever gets access or compromise that account, or I mean that machine, will potentially have the ability to have access to that global account or know who that global account is and, do whatever they want to do with it. So we have that checked off the list. We're going to blah, blah, bloop, cross it off. 5.1.4.4, local admin assignment limited on join. And of course, if we are adhering to everything that we've been talking about, as far as like least privilege, we don't want every single user to be added onto the device as local administrator. For most organizations, everyone has to, if you are using the company portal, you would have to go there to download your applications. Or if you are downloading apps, you would need to send a ticket or get IT to provide you with a -A credential to do that, or like an admin authorized account. So we're going to set that to no, and we're going to save that. So that is set. So the next one is 5.1.4.5, lapse enabled. Lapse is a password, is a local administrator password solution. Basically, it rotates passwords. It rotates credentials for, oh, it's right below. It rotates credentials on that machine, but we're not going to set that up right now. I don't have any devices set up, but it is recommended in the CIS controls to have that set up. I am going to, however, bypass it because I don't have any machines set up and this is a test environment. The next control is 5.1.4.6, which is a level 2. Users restricted from BitLocker key recovery. Of course, we don't want users to have access to recover their own BitLocker key because BitLocker encrypts their hard drives. And if someone, like a bad actor, steals it or anyone wants to decrypt it, they would potentially have access to the key and be able to decrypt the whole entire hard drive. So we want to restrict that. So we want to set that to yes. And we're going to save, and we can cross that out of our list. And so now we are moving to apps. No user consent for app data access, which is a level 2. And here, this one, if you've ever used any Google products, like when you are using, let's go to enterprise apps, like if you are registering for another service, like a third-party service, and you are using a Google account, and it says, consent this third-party platform to access your Google account. This is exactly the same thing. We don't want users to be doing that. We don't want users to be consenting third parties access. So we're gonna do not allow user consent. So that users cannot do that. Only admins can do that. 5.1.5.2, admin consent workflow enabled. Enable admin consent workflow is enabled, which is right below. Admin consents, we want to make sure that's enabled. We want to add, so ideally, you would have, this is exactly what I was talking about earlier on. Ideally, you can have admins groups to do that. But you can also have groups. I mean, you can also have roles. Like you can add people with precise roles that can conduct this activity. For me, I'm just going to put the global admin for now. But the best way to do this, of course, for me personally, I would always go back to groups in case you want security to have access to it, or you can just do it by roles as well. 5.1.6.1, collaboration invites to allowed domains. Okay, when it comes to external collaboration, this is where it varies based on what the organization that you are working for do and does. A lot of other companies collaborate a lot with other companies. So they have a lot of other people coming and going in their tenants. So we will navigate to external identities, which should be somewhere here. And this configuration is basically most people that you are collaborating with, they can only be, for example, I was collaborating with Google.com. I would add them here, and they would be able to join. Anyone with the Google.com domain will be able to join my tenant, and I'll be able to send them an invitation to join my tenant. We're going to set it to my personal domain. All right, that's set. We can cross that off our list. The next one is 5.1.6.2. Ensure that guest users' access is restricted, which is guest user access is restricted. Even if your organization collaborate with a lot of people, you would want to turn this off because you don't want guest users, people who are already guests outside of your organization, to have the ability to invite other guests to come collaborate with you. So we're going to turn that off. That doesn't mean you won't be able to invite people still. You'll still be able to bring other people in, but that will have to be someone in the IT team or someone internal to be able to do that, send invites out. So we're going to cross that off our list. 5.1.6.3, guest invitation. Ensure guest users' invitation are limited to the guest inviter role. This one we probably don't want to do. This is one of those settings where no one in the organization can invite guest users, including admins. We don't want that. We want only users assigned to specific admin roles can invite guests. Yes, here's what we've done. Status, here we've completed from here to, We've completed from here to here. We've deferred. We've completed from here to here. Here we've deferred. We've completed all of this. We've also completed this, which is the first thing that we did. Control 5.2.2.1, MFA for admin roles. Ensure MFA is enabled for all users in administrative roles. All right. So if you didn't know, there's two places where you can access conditional access. You can get it from here, from risk-based conditional access. And it's the same thing as coming here and doing conditional access. Quite literally, it's the exact same thing. Like you can see the one that we set up a little bit earlier here. You can see those here. And you can see this one here, and it's the exact same thing. The one that this control is asking for is MFA for admin. And that's already turned on by default. So we're just going to check that off our list. Or we can, if we want to, we can create our own policy. Next, block legacy authentication. 5.2.2.3, that's already here. Block legacy authentication. Microsoft has pre-built that for us, but we can take a look at it. Who is it applying to? It's applying to all users, all resources, literally all the apps that comes included. Client apps, there should be a, so these are the legacy authentication clients that this is applying to. And what is it doing? It's blocking the grant. Access control is grant. What are we trying to do? Are we trying to grant access or are we trying to block access? And in this case, we're trying to block access for the condition that they are legacy authentication clients. All right, perfect. So we're gonna go ahead and cross that off our list. Beautiful, man. So we're gonna move forward with 5.2.2.4. Ensure sign-in frequency is enabled and bar sessions are not persistent for admin users. That's what we were talking about a little bit earlier as well. So instead of, I don't remember which control that was. Instead of completely disabling the remember sign-in function, we can basically set the sign-in frequency for users, like specifically say, hey, after X amount of hours, which is like 7 hours because the work there is 7 or 8 hours, or 10, depends on where you're working. So it makes sense, like, instead of having to do that every single day. But for admin accounts, like depends on, how much the place that you're working at gets audited? Is it banking? Is it healthcare? How sensitive is the information that you are working with? It might be every session, like every time you are logging on to do any type of work, you have to sign in again, and your accounts do not have admin access by default. You have to use privilege escalation with EPM and basically request access, or if you are high level enough where you already have this access, you just have to note why you are enabling this level of access. So we're going to configure that. That might be for those people who's watching, who's already in the field doing this every day. It says, things that they already know. For people who are not doing this every day, now you know it's a thing that exists. And if your job doesn't have it, you can suggest it. It's very good on security. Okay, nice. So we're going to navigate our way to conditional access policy. We're going to create one. If we're following the same, so ideally, in a real world situation, you want to follow the same convention that the company is using. So this is Unibyte. It's a conditional access policy. This is for persistent, what's this called? Sign-in frequency. Sign-in frequency, and it's for admins. This policy will apply to admins. If you want to, you can assign it to all humans. I mean, yes, humans. Yes, users are humans, but sometimes it's service accounts. But anyways, let's just say we're gonna build this one for admins. Who do we want to include in this role? We're not applying it to everyone. We only want to apply it to people who are admins. So we're going to do directory roles and basically select all of the roles that you want to apply it to. We definitely want to apply it to global admins, global administrator, anybody within administrator for real. You would want to apply this to. Some of these you don't have to apply it to. It's mostly like the accounts that log on the most often. There's so many of these freaking stupid roles. But I mean, in the real world, you definitely want to go through this with a fine-tuned I don't know the word I'm looking for. I apologize. At this point, I am just talking to occupy space. Let me select the rest of these. Okay, I went ahead and I selected 94 freaking roles, and including the global reader. So sometimes security, like for cybersecurity purposes, you want to isolate the security team from the system administration team. So sometimes you might not want to give security global administrator. You might want to just give them access to read the tenant and be able to see what's going on, because they're not really, if you have separation, not everybody needs global admin. Some people just need the ability to read and gather data, get logs, and see what's going on instead of like being able to make changes. And also, people in security, it's obvious that people will target them more often because they think they have access, or they probably will have access if they're not. Anyways, what do we want to do? We want to grant them access. Which one are we working on? Sign-in frequency. So under session, before we even go here, under session, this is what controls sign-in frequency. How long do we want them to have access for? I think 7 for most organizations, or 8 for the work day. Well, most people work 9 hours. For the work day is fine, unless you want them to do it twice a day. And it depends on how difficult the place that you're working on. It could be every time somebody is logging on, they have to provide this. But I think that's a little bit too much. So I'll just set it to 8 hours. After every 8 hours when you come into work, you have to re-authenticate back in. And that makes complete sense to me. And next, we want to select this persistent browser session. We want to make sure that this only works early when cloud apps are selected. Oh, I skipped one. Target resources. What are we targeting? We are targeting all cloud resources, all cloud apps, everything. Yeah, man. We want to go back to session. Sign-in frequency, we said 8 hours. Persistent browser session, we want that to be never persistent. Grant, what are we trying to do? We need to grant them access. In order to grant them access, we want one of these things to be true. We want them to require MFA. Okay. And sometimes you probably don't want to select this right away. You might want to put it on report only because it will sign them out. I will just turn it on because I know I want it on. So also, like I keep saying, you might want to start utilizing what is called a break glass account. Just have an account that has the ability to get back in there if you ever get locked out. For now, I've been using this. You want this to be your break glass account, which you set some crazy long password for, and unless you have a company phone, or you have like a YubiKey that is stored somewhere secure with a manager, or stored with multiple people or something like that, you probably want that account to not have MFA. It'll just be a crazy long password that you don't log in with it unless there is an emergency situation. But anyways, that's created, so I'm going ahead and check that off my list of things to do. Check. Okay, let's move on to the next. Next one is 5.2.2.5. Ensure phishing resistant MFA strength is required for administrator. So by default, Microsoft created this one. So in this next phase, what we're going to do before we create this next policy, we're going to go to the one that Microsoft created for admin users, for all admin. I chose the incorrect one. Of course, I'm almost like Stevie Wonder at this point. I can't see, man. I cannot see nothing. We're going to do report only. I understand. Because we want to create another policy. We're going to create another policy that mimics this multi-factor authentication for admins, because the next control needs us to select that phishing resistant strength for all admin accounts. So we're going to come here. I'm going to paste it. Company name, conditional access, MFA for admins. Who do we want it to apply to? We want it to apply it to users and groups. We want it to be applied to a certain directory. All administrators. It would be nice if one day I learn how to spell. I am going to pause the video and click these. Perfecto, papa. Okay, so we went ahead and we collected all of these. What are we targeting? We are targeting all resources. Conditions that needs to be met. No, we don't have any conditions, but we want to grant access control. We need to require MFA and we need to do phish resistant access control. Of course, most people already know what phish resistant is. Like, you can't use SMS and password and so forth and so on. We're going to create that. We're going to turn it on. Of course, if you want to, you can always exclude your break glass account. We're going to create it, though. And then we're going to go back here. And then we're going to enable this and put it back on. I understand. Okay, save. Okay, now we basically have MFA for all admins, and then we also have phish resistant MFA for admins. So I am nitpicky about making sure that things are named correctly because it makes life so much easier. What I am going to do is I am gonna rename this phish resistant MFA admins. There's no guesswork on what this does. You come here, you see that MFA for admins, and then, it would be nice if it updates or refresh. You know that this is the policy that's controlling the phish resistant MFA for admins. So we're gonna check that off our list. 5.2.2.6, enable identity protection, user risks policy. This policy if you, I mean, if you don't have security team and you don't have people keep looking over their shoulders, yes, you can do it. I am personally not going to implement it. Basically, you can target users who are labeled as high risks, and every time that somebody moves from like medium risk or low risk to high risk, you would require them to change their password, and you want their session to be, every time they are logging on, you want their session to literally require them to relog on. So every time somebody moves from low risk to high risk, the system will require them to reset their password, and they have to log on every single time. I don't think I need that. I'll bypass that. Another thing while we're here, I don't think it's part of the controls. I was just looking ahead. Another thing that I like to do is come here and name locations and basically create a name locations. We're gonna call it UB. That's why I carry this around. Locations blocked. So we theoretically want to block every country except for the great USA. Later on, we can use this location name, like named location group that we have, to create a policy to basically say, hey, if somebody is trying to log on in any place other than the United States, block them. Of course, this doesn't apply for every company, especially if you're doing business with people outside of the US, or if you have contractors who work outside of the US. And even then, you still probably want this policy to include any country that you're not doing business in. Like, the high threat priorities, like Russia and, the whatever countries that we beefing with at the moment. Okay, Papa, let's move on. So we're gonna go to 5.2.27. Enable identity protection sign-in risk policy. So we want to, we were talking about this identity protection user risk-based policy, which would, this one is just different in that it's a challenge instead. And what I mean by challenge is, instead of doing the most of signing them out, asking them to sign in with their password and having them do the session every time, what this policy is going to do for us is that if a user gets moved to the high risk category, what we want to happen is we want them to be challenged for MFA. Hey, your account, we are already requesting that all users use MFA, but if a user was low risk and they are now high risk, we want them to be challenged for MFA. Hey, prove that you are a user basically, or your account is not under attack. So we're gonna go ahead. I want to copy this here, and then we're gonna go ahead and create a new policy. And okay, we're going to paste it's a conditional access policy. It's what is it? It's a sign-in, and it's a sign-in risk MFA challenge for all users. What we want to do here, we want to select all users. Of course, I want to exclude my break glass account, which is this one here. Select. Ideally, you want to exclude all of your break glass accounts from conditional access policies, because that's how you would get back in if any of these policies would lock you. I mean, in a big organization, you have multiple people, and I would hopefully that at least one person meet these requirements. So, but anyways, that's best practice. We want to include all. Oh, hold on, let me get some water. Okay, as I am recording this on the fly, here's something that I just learned. To do the sign-in risks condition policy that this is requesting, you will need a higher level licensing. You need that Microsoft P2 license in order to use it. And I don't have that for this tenant that I am trying out. So some things you won't know. I mean, obviously you should know this. Like, we don't know everything. So we're going to scratch this. We're going to accept and defer this policy because we just don't have licensing for it. Next one. We might have to defer that as well because we don't have the option to evaluate sign-in risks. It's 5.2.2.8. Ensure sign-in risk is blocked for medium and high risk. We don't have that, so we're just gonna have to defer that. If we do get the licensing for it, then maybe we will implement it. We're moving forward to 5.2.2.9. Ensure a managed device is required for authentication. We're going to defer that again because we don't have any devices at the moment. But it's great, which I talked about earlier as well. It's what we call a trusted device policy, where like a trusted device, a device that meets a certain level of health can and is registered with our tenant and registered with our on-prem AD. It's either fully joined or hybrid joined to our tenant can access our environment. But instead, what you would want to do is, if you don't have trusted device policies, or you're not using Intune, or you're not bringing any device into Entra, you can create a policy to block all users, and then you exclude all admin users. And for application, you select all of the, Microsoft Entra applications that you currently use, like the Exchange, the Entra, the M365s in that group, and then you block everyone from accessing it except for admin users. That's what I would do. But anyways, I don't have licensing for that, so we don't have any managed devices, so I'm going to defer that. Next one is 5.2.2.12. Ensure device code sign-in flow is blocked. I think a lot of these devices ones I want to skip because it doesn't make any sense to do it when I don't have any devices. Okay, my goal is to keep this video a little reasonably short, or I should say reasonably timed. There's no such thing as short here, because we could go on and on and on and configure so many other stuff, but we just, the remaining items are really not that important. The rest that's left over for the Microsoft Entra portion is all L1s. So with that being said, this concludes the Microsoft Entra portion of this audit for the CIS version 6. So next, maybe I'll record a portion for M365. We can also do Exchange, and we can do all of that stuff. Yeah, thank you for watching. If you learned something, let me know. If not, let me know also. Peace.